Good morning, everybody. My name is Rob Tricella. I am a Senior Account Executive with Apex. I will be your host for today's webinar that is focused on taking your conference rooms to the next level with Microsoft Teams rooms. A few logistics before we get started. Today's webinar is a Teams live event. Attendees are muted but can interact via our Q&A. Michael Dupree is our moderator for today and will either respond to questions in the Q&A window if appropriate, or he will promote them to our presenters to respond live before the conclusion of our webinar. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube within the next few days. You will receive a link to the recording when it is available, should you want to revisit the webinar or share it with your peers. Joining me today is our Senior Practice Director of Microsoft at Apex, Sean Flahy. But before we jump into today's topic, I'd like to provide a quick overview of Apex Digital Solutions for those of you joining us for the first time. Apex Digital Solutions has been serving the Metro Detroit area for over 20 years with the purpose of empowering people to make a positive difference in the lives of others. We provide professional and managed services around a broad portfolio of Microsoft solutions, and we're also a reseller of Microsoft licensing and hardware. With over 350 customers and 450 cloud deployments, we are proud of maintaining our focus on high standards. Our NPS scores are consistently above 80, while our customer satisfaction ratings exceed 99%. One thing that is apparent, meeting needs are changing. The statistics listed are pre-COVID, but while these may seem conservative now, the theme is still relevant. Over the past 6 months, we have worked alongside customers as they found new ways to stay connected and productive with Microsoft Teams. With more than 75 million daily active users, Teams has proven mission critical for remote and hybrid work models across different meeting rooms. As we begin emerging from the era of remote everything, it's clear that the ways that we stay in touch and collaborate is constantly evolving. The workplace of the future will accommodate hybrid scenarios. This means some people may work from the office, while others may work remotely, or even some combination of the two. To accomplish this, they'll need connected and secure conference rooms that serve as hubs for hybrid work in which everyone feels engaged, whether they're in the room, joining from home, or working on the go. Effective meeting room experiences enable users to start or join a meeting quickly. This allows for maximum productivity, proactive management, monitoring, and remediation to keep the rooms functional, secure, and up to date. Today, we're going to review Microsoft Teams room systems and best practices for planning, deploying, and managing of your Teams rooms to deliver high quality calling and meeting experiences. At this time, I'm going to pass it over to our Senior Practice Director of Microsoft, Sean Flahy, to dive deeper into Microsoft Teams rooms. Sean?
Great, thanks a lot, Rob. So today's content, we're specifically talking about Microsoft Teams rooms, or MTRs, as you may hear me call them as an acronym for them. And I want to just call out an assumption here for many of you that are watching live or maybe watching this recording, that many of us are using Microsoft Teams as our primary virtual meeting solution, or we may be thinking about using or moving to Teams as a virtual meeting solution going forward. So over the last 6 months, we've been using Teams very, very heavily on our PCs, on our Macs, and on our mobile devices. And the way that Microsoft has architected Microsoft Teams was really to have a consistent experience across any device, whether you're on your PC, your Mac, your mobile device, and now as well as conference rooms or just any shared spaces in that aspect as well. So what is a Microsoft Teams room? A Microsoft Teams room is a hardware solution that you can use to outfit your conference room or a shared space to connect seamlessly to Microsoft Teams meetings. So many of us are used to booking our Teams meetings through Outlook, right? Or we may book them through Teams as well. And when we book, when we create a meeting, we create the Teams meeting and we invite the room. And the nice thing about that is that has been in the experience that we've used for years to book rooms through Outlook. And now when we walk into a room, we'll see a touch panel like you can see there in the picture. And we should see our meeting there right on the touch panel. And we simply click the join button. And we call this feature One Touch Join. So when we walk into the room, we see our meeting on the touch panel, we click the join button, and that will join the room to the meeting. That will also light up the room camera, the speakers, the microphones, and also the TV displays as well, so that the user doesn't have to worry about fumbling around with remotes and turning on cameras and things like that. It all just is controlled through the room system itself. So there, you can see there on the slide, one of the benefits of Microsoft Teams Room was ease of use. And so really, no matter what size room we have, we as long as it's booked through our normal channels, we walk in, do the one touch join experience, and the room is now joined to the meeting. So on this slide, I want to talk about a few other key experiences related to Teams meeting inside of rooms. And one is we're really talking about transforming our rooms. And so with the Teams feature set that we're used to using on our PCs and desktops, coming to the room, we have things like the one touch join that I just mentioned. And sometimes in our conference rooms, we may have a phone sitting on the table, whether that be a conference phone or a handset sitting on the table. And depending on how big the table is or how big the room is, this may cause some issues with audio, or maybe we might have to move the phone around to make sure everyone can hear everyone. But with Microsoft Teams rooms, these systems have the ability to make phone calls as well. So at this point, we're talking about removing that phone from the table and replacing it with a touch panel that sits in the center of the room or center of the table. And that touch panel is really kind of considered the hub or the control center to control the meeting. You can kind of see in the opaque picture here that center of the table touch panel right there. And what's also nice about Microsoft Teams rooms is we really have the ability to make any space a Teams meeting space. So whether we're talking about a small huddle room, medium-sized room, maybe a board room with a long table, or even some maybe a multi-purpose room where there may be movable furniture or other desks that are in there. There are different hardware configurations for each type of these scenarios. We also have the ability to add different HD audio and video components. So most of these Teams room systems come as sort of a kit, and they come with specific speakers and microphones. However, if you have these large multi-purpose rooms and maybe you already have existing audio visual equipment or speakers or microphones in the ceiling potentially, as we'll evaluate those, but there's a good potential that you may be able to reuse some of that investment, because we know those audio visual configurations are not always that cheap. The third one here is these systems are easy to deploy and simple to manage. So these Teams rooms will run either Android or Windows 10, and they run the Microsoft Teams app specifically on these devices. And these can be managed through existing tools. So whether you already domain join your Windows PCs, maybe you're using SCCM or Intune to manage these consistent tools, you can continue to use those. And then a little bit later in the presentation, we're going to talk about some newer management capabilities for these Teams rooms. Also want to call it the low training effort. Because these systems are designed and when they're deployed to have that one-touch join experience, the training really is, make sure the users are inviting the room properly, make sure they're making it a Teams meeting, and when they walk into the room, make sure they're clicking the one-touch join button on the touch panel. So very low training effort and something that many of your users will pick up very quickly. And then the last one, connecting with different hardware solutions, we're going to talk about here on the next slide. So transitioning over here to the specific hardware solutions, I want to talk about the Microsoft Teams Room for Android, or formerly known as collaboration bars. This name was changed pretty much as of last week with Microsoft Ignite, so we wanted to make sure we call out the new name for this. So currently there are two vendors that will create these Microsoft Teams rooms for Androids. We have the Poly device there at the top, and then we have the Yealink device there at the bottom. So these devices are purpose-built. Their primary focus is for Microsoft Teams meetings with advanced audio and video, presentation, and content sharing. These are integrated devices, much smaller in footprint. They have you can see there, if we look at the one at the top for Poly, we have the speakers, microphone, and camera all built into that bar. Sort of like it looks like a sound bar, but now also has the video camera built into it as well. These devices are really meant for smaller spaces because they are smaller and don't have a lot of modular parts. It's kind of more of an all-in-one solution. They're meant for smaller spaces, smaller huddle rooms, maybe 2 to 3 people usually, and these connect to a single TV. And these devices can also be managed in the Teams Admin Center, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Moving on to the more traditional Microsoft Teams Room experience are these devices there's 6 different vendors that provide these, and you can see pictures of the touch panel for each one of these. Again, these are purpose-built for Microsoft Teams meetings for more advanced audio and visual experiences. Also, you can do presentation and content sharing from these as well. These solutions are more modular in the fact that you have a touch panel that sits in the middle of the table, and you may have microphones that could potentially sit on the table or somewhere else. You likely have speakers that sit in the front of the room or under the TV or around the TV. And then you can connect up to 2 TVs actually to these devices, which is nice. So if you're doing a video conference and you want to have your video feeds on one TV, and maybe you're presenting a PowerPoint on the other, and so you can have your PowerPoint on one TV, video feeds on the other, and you really have a nice seamless experience for a video conference with these Teams Room systems. I mentioned before that these ones specifically run Windows 10. And they do run the Microsoft Teams app that runs automatically when you boot these devices up. Ability to manage these like you do your other Windows PCs. So if you have specific antivirus tools, like I said, domain join, SCCM, Intune management, these are all capable of doing that as well. This is just another screen of some of the solutions from each vendor that I talked about before. I also did want to include up here in the top, I do have solutions from Poly and from Yealink here. These are the traditional conference phones. So these still are available for Teams, but they don't have the full Microsoft Teams Room experience. At the bottom here, I want to call this out real quick. Some organizations may have invested in SIP or H323 standards-based video conferencing equipment already, maybe from Polycom, from years past. We understand that this equipment was not cheap, and you may want to extend the life of this equipment. If that's the case, there are solutions from vendors like BlueJeans, Pexip, and Poly that allow those solutions to connect into Microsoft Teams meetings in a similar sense that these purpose-built Microsoft Teams Room solutions do as well. So now that we've talked about what the hardware solutions are actually available, the next question is, how do I know what device I need for my specific room or my specific space? And so there are a number of different variables to consider before you can make the right selection. Here are some of the variables that we walk through with customers when we're deciding which one is the best. So specific things like, what does the furniture configuration look like? If the furniture is very, very movable, then we don't really want to put that touch panel in the middle of a table if that table is going to be moved, right? So we may mount it to a wall or put it on a credenza somewhere where it's not likely to be moved, and and bumped around. Other things we're looking at, obviously, are room size, very important, room capacity, and also where are people going to be sitting, or where are the windows located in the room. And those types of things come into effect when we're thinking about where do we mount the camera. We want to make sure we mount the camera in a location that, one, is not going to get glare from a window, or it's going to capture the entire audience in the room. Other things we think about are our device management and updates and making sure that we keep these things secure. And potentially, you may already have an existing OEM relationship. Maybe you buy all your PCs from Dell or from Lenovo, and we may want to go with the room system that aligns with their offering. Understand this is by no means a comprehensive list, but we're hoping that you take some of these features into consideration when selecting the right device and or combination of devices. So now that we've selected our hardware, we've kind of created the design that we want for our room. Now we have to talk about licensing, right? So we have two options to license our Teams rooms. We have our Microsoft Teams Room Standard, and we have the Microsoft Teams Room Premium. The standard license is $15 per device per month, and this includes all the relevant license to run the Teams room. This used to be called the meeting room license, but they've rebranded it to call the Teams Room Standard now that they have two offerings. And this offering will allow your Teams rooms to be managed within the standard Teams Admin Center portal. And there's no proactive or alerting yet, but I have some news that I want to share in the coming slides on that. The other option we have here is the Microsoft Teams Room Premium offering, which is $50 per device per month. This is an uplift on top of the $15. And what this offers is a remote proactive Microsoft managed service to manage these rooms. This is a nice monitoring service for your room systems that offers 24/7 monitoring, access to dedicated experts related to these room systems, and also some enhanced insights and reporting that we'll go through here in a couple of slides. So the portal that we're all used to using if we manage Microsoft Teams is called the Teams Admin Center. In here, we manage our actual Microsoft Teams, our Teams users, potentially a lot of our different policies that we use to manage Microsoft Teams. And now we also have the ability to manage all of our devices as well. So from the Teams Admin Center, we have the ability to manage our Teams phones, our conference phones, and as you can see here, our Microsoft Teams rooms for Android or Teams rooms for Windows that we talked about a little bit earlier. Once we implement our Microsoft Teams room, these devices will auto-enroll in the Teams Admin Center. So there's no special process that we have to go through to get these added to the portal. They will auto-enroll, which is nice. Some other benefits of having these devices in the Teams Admin Center is, I think one of the great features is tracking and managed inventory. That way I always have a constant up-to-date list of all the rooms that are in place in my organization, where they're located, and also the health of these devices. You know, when we implement one of these devices, we have to connect up speakers, microphones, cameras, TVs, other things to the device. And if any of those devices becomes disconnected or there's a hardware failure or becomes unhealthy, and a user walks in to have a meeting, that could potentially have a bad experience. We don't want them to walk into a meeting and not being able to hear the other side on the call, or not being able to see themselves on video or see the other parties on video. So we want to make sure that all these devices are always healthy, and by monitoring them through the Teams Admin Center, we can verify if a device is in a healthy or non-healthy state, and we can take action based on those alerts. There are going to be, actually in the next slide here, there's device management alerts that are coming to the Teams Admin Center very soon. This was announced last week at Ignite. And so when a device becomes unhealthy, or maybe someone unplugs a camera, or unplugs a microphone by accident, the IT administrators will get alerted either via email, or this Teams Admin Center can have the ability to hook into a lot of these service management providers, such as ServiceNow or other ticketing systems. So you have the ability to create tickets, generate tickets, and dispatch technicians to the rooms when these rooms become unhealthy. That's important because we want to get in front of these things before an end user could potentially have a bad experience. Moving on to the Microsoft Teams Room Premium features. So I mentioned this is a managed service from Microsoft, and it actually does have its own management portal separate from the Teams Admin Center. And this portal will offer some enhanced reporting and insights into the usage of all your Teams rooms. So obviously, when we purchase these devices, and if we purchase these for multiple rooms or shared spaces, that's a big investment. And we want to make sure that we're getting good use out of this investment and that users are actually using the hardware that we purchased for them. And so this will give you insights into how many meetings are scheduled in the rooms, how many meetings are Teams meetings in the rooms, how many calls are we having in these rooms. So it may give you a level of visibility that you may not have had before within your conference rooms or shared spaces, so that you can make sure that one, you're getting use out of your investment, and two, that users are actually using the solutions and having a good experience at that. Other benefits of the Teams Room Premium service, one of them is called managed updates. So I mentioned this is a modular hardware solution. We have a touch panel, we have cameras, microphones, speakers, and all of these devices have their own different sets of firmware. And what this service will do is make sure that all of these devices are always up to date on the latest firmware, BIOS for all the different peripherals, Windows updates are consistently up to date on these devices to make sure that these are always secure and always running in top shape on these devices. Last thing I'll cover here is the ability to do rings. So maybe I have a set of rooms that I want to get these updates first, and I want to validate those updates before I release these updates to the rest of the organization or the rest of the rooms or shared spaces. I can control that via rings in the premium service. So that really concludes my content for today. I'm going to pass it back to Rob for some final thoughts.
Excellent. Thank you, Sean. Those device management alerts seemed like a great feature to look forward to.
I'm looking forward to that for sure.
So now I'm going to review the Apex solutions surrounding Microsoft Teams rooms. Our Ready, Ignite, and Empower Teamwork solution offerings improve organizational adoption and return on investment with Microsoft Teams across the chat, meetings, rooms, calling, and collaboration, as well as best practices for change management, configuration, and rollout to ensure maximum security and productivity. At Apex, we have you covered through your Microsoft Teams Rooms lifecycle with Ready, Ignite, and Empower solutions. That being said, today I want to focus on our Ready for Teams Meetings Room solution. Our Ready engagements define strategy and roadmap for meetings, devices, and rooms within your environment. Apex, as Sean mentioned, has experience across rooms of all sizes, including complex deployments involving advanced AV needs. Ready for Teams meetings includes the following: assess meetings and meeting room capabilities, processes, and licensing, deliver an immersive demo to showcase modern meeting experiences, and identify use cases and scenarios to accelerate adoption. The key benefits and outcomes from the solution include alignment of the drivers and desired outcomes across key stakeholders, understanding of the environment, site, and network requirements, and a roadmap for deployment and adoption of Microsoft Teams meetings and rooms. In addition, as your needs around Teams meetings evolve into live events and other unique meeting scenarios, we can assist with the customized branding, event production, and much more. Finally, please keep in mind that Microsoft has funding available for eligible customers. Contact us to find out more if you qualify. That concludes our presentation for today. We will now check in with our moderator, Michael, for any questions from the Q&A panel that have not yet been addressed. Michael?
Great. Thanks so much, Rob. So we still have time. If you have any questions in the Q&A, you can submit them in the Q&A panel on the side. We do have a couple questions that we got from the registration process. So this one I'm gonna throw to you, Sean. Someone asks how they can use Microsoft Teams rooms effectively to do virtual training for their remote workers.
Sure. So virtual training, obviously you have a trainer, and that trainer can either be in front of their computer with a headset on, sharing their screen and sharing PowerPoints, kind of like I'm doing today with this webinar, or they can join the Teams room and present from there. So if they're inside of a room or a shared space and they join the meeting from the Teams room system like I just talked about, there may be a couple things to consider. One, are there people that are actually inside the room with them? And if they are, that's something to consider. And two is making sure that the presenter has the proper video and audio requirements. So we'll likely want the camera specifically pointed at the presenter or pointed at wherever they're standing or sitting, so that they make sure that the rest of the audience that is joined potentially remotely has the ability to see them and see their body language. Also want to make sure that the speakers and microphones are positioned in a way that enhances the way that this enhances the presenter or the speaker, because the really key here is to make sure the experience for the remote attendees is the best. And so things like camera angles and microphone positioning are very important if you're going to join virtual training sessions from a room.
Awesome, thank you. And another question that we got during the registration process was, with the emergence of Teams rooms, there's been an acceleration of new features. What features do you anticipate that will be available within the next 12 months that we should be aware of?
Sure. And I think one of them I just want to call out that is kind of being released now and should be available very, very soon. I mentioned before that these devices are purpose-built for Microsoft Teams. Well, I think most of us are aware not everyone we work with uses Microsoft Teams. We would love them to, but that's just not the case. And so they may be using solutions like WebEx or Zoom. And so now there is a feature called Direct Meeting Join that is available today with WebEx with WebEx meetings, and is coming out very, very soon. I think within the next few weeks for Zoom meetings. And what this means is someone sends me a Zoom invite, right? And I want to be able to join that Zoom meeting from the conference room that I'm in that is running a Teams room system. I can forward my Zoom meeting invite to the room, and I can still have the same experience that I have with a Teams meeting, for example, with the one-touch join. So I will walk into the room, hit the join button, and then I will be joined into the Zoom meeting instead of the Teams meeting. I think that's going to be really key. Obviously, many of us are familiar with coworkers, friends, family that use Zoom and WebEx and other solutions, and having these rooms available to use those solutions is going to be key.
Awesome. So we have a question in the Q&A panel. Coco asks, hi, as we work from home already for more than 7 months, working in the office is not an option. Can you propose specific gadgets or items that we can enhance working in Teams from home, or are there specific devices that we should not use? Thank you.
Absolutely. Great question. And Michael, maybe you can put this in the chat, but there's a URL that I want to point everyone to, and it's called aka.ms/Teams devices. And so every device that is on that website is considered to be certified to work with Microsoft Teams. And what that means is these devices have all gone through a third-party certification program, not from Microsoft, that they've gone through audio tests, video tests to make sure that when you plug them in, they're just going to work with Microsoft Teams. So whether that's a headset specifically, a Bluetooth headset, a wired headset, maybe it's a speakerphone, a personal speakerphone that you want to sit in front of you, or maybe it's a webcam. all these devices are certified with Microsoft Teams and will give you the best experience.
Excellent. So that appears to be all of our Coco says great, thanks, awesome. Thank you for attending, Coco. That appears to be all the questions that we have in the Q&A for now. If you do have any other questions, make sure to follow up with Rob Turkala. He'll be sending you an email with the recording within the next couple of days.
So thank you again for your time. We hope you found the webinar very valuable. Your feedback is important to us. We will be sending the short survey along with the webinar recording within the next few days, just like Michael mentioned, and we'd appreciate your response so we continue to grow and deliver value. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone. Thanks.